Hi and welcome to the Action Ecology Regenerative Farming Tour of Aotearoa New Zealand. In this series I travel the country meeting regenerative farmers, walking the land, hearing their stories to better understand what they do, why they do it and how it works. In this episode I got to spend time with Dean and Antoinette Martin at Glenlands farm in Hawke's Bay. I got an opportunity to hear from Dean about how his particular management approach has helped reduce input costs, increase resilience to drought and improve the health and function of this whole system. Glenlands is a really good example of how powerful the combination of knowledge and observation can be in improving the health and resilience of a landscape. So I hope you enjoy coming along with me and getting a glimpse into how this particular farm's context has informed their regenerative farming approach.
So we're in Hawke's Bay, the east coast of the North Island, New Zealand. We're about sort of 140, 150 metres above sea level here. The top of the farm's 280 metres above sea level. 244 hectares and 145 effective, grazing sheep, cattle and a sort of handful of half wild, half domesticated goats. We tend to be summer dry, so a lot of our management sort of revolved around that to get us through the dry summers. Keep the ground covered, and it sort of helps to keep the biology, so we're able to really respond as soon as we get autumn rains, really grow grass quickly in that time and make the most of limited moisture we get at times of the year. Makes a big difference with the whether it's a northerly face or a flat or a southerly face. And our landscape's extremely muddled, so you know a 1 hectare paddock or even a half hectare paddock can have a northerly face and a southerly face and a flat bit and a wet little swampy bit in the corner somewhere. So with electric fencing with the cattle, you know, you can fence those areas off. So sometimes I'll come through a small break and I might take a corner off or a northerly face off and leave it for the next round, because I wanted that to keep covered over the summer, and you can afford to graze the southerly face and the flat sort of area and manage them a bit differently like that. With the sheep it becomes a bit more awkward because there's a lot of work putting 2 or 3 wires up with the sheep to do the same sort of thing. So they seem to keep them on a bit more uniform sort of landscape at crucial times of the year, and have the cattle on where you're actually just trying to manage them in different parts of the paddocks.
What is regenerative agriculture, and how is what you're doing different from just the normal conventional approach?
Just the biggest thing is, I think, is how we think about pasture management. And the traditional thing is the animals need X amount of dry matter sort of thing, and it's the grasses, you're just managing your grass to provide that amount of dry matter to the animals, and that's pretty much their sole focus, where for us it's the animals and the grass, it combines. So you're using the animals as a tool to get the grass in the right position to be grazed at the animals at the right time. So, and there's that whole interplay there that the traditional type people, it's just the numbers, we need this much grass to feed that, but there's we use the animals as a tool to get that grass in the right condition that we want to have them in at that time, using recovery periods and trampling, and so over the summer keeping that ground covered and the biology more active in the soil. So it's not, a lot of the time we're on the system, we're letting that quality go. When they look out in the paddocks and they'll see the seed head and the brown grass there, and they'll see that we've lost control and lost the quality of it. But when you got that there, we've still got good quality clovers in underneath over the dry parts of the summer that we wouldn't have if we'd grazed that seed head out. It just protects and creates a protected environment for that. And then when we come through, they're eating that quality grass in the bottom and hopefully laying the seed head and the straw and stalks down on the ground to keep that covered.
So how does the biology of the sheep versus the cattle, how does that play into what your decision making in terms of what you're doing?
They complement each other pretty well. You get the response from just changing from grazing a paddock with a cattle, then you put the sheep through, and the grass really seems to respond to that, just having a slightly different graze pattern across it. They graze slightly different things and they stimulate the grass in slightly different ways. This time of year it can look a bit of a mess, and but then by with this rain we've had, by the end of March, April, we're going to look like a dairy farm here with good quality ryegrass and clover, and you won't notice that there's brown top and crested dog's tail and all these poor quality grasses in this mix at all.
Those things are not problems though, are they?
No, they're just all part of the diversity. They have their role in the whole system, you know.
Yeah. And you're using those things.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, they can provide cover to the soil over the summer and protect that biology. You know, anything the animals don't eat, and we're managing to lay onto the ground, especially over that summer period, or at any time of year when you put that cover down, it just feeds the biology and stimulates the fungi and everything in the soil and keeps all that system going. And the more you can do that, the more nutrients the grass and stuff are able to get access to in the soil. Our grazing premises, you concentrate on the species you want, not the ones you don't. So generally a lot of farmers, when they're putting animals into a paddock, it's to clean up the undesirables in their pastures that they want to get rid of, sort of thing. And when they're doing that, they're totally overgrazing all the desirable species before the animals will even touch the undesirables. Where when we're going into paddock, we're only concentrating on those desirable species, so I don't want to overgraze the cockswoods and the ryegrasses, and then I just want to graze them till they're grazed and then just leave everything else. And that just, you know, as I said, the next time around, hopefully those undesirables are long enough, I can come and knock them on the ground and keep that soil covered with them.
Yeah. So you're using them as a tool as well, helping you pasture. Yeah, like in the spring, one of the first things to go to seed is the sweet vernal. And that's great because it grows up and it protects your clover underneath. So, you know, at that time of year, everyone doesn't want to see a seed head, most of the traditional systems and stuff. But I just see it as such an advantage in sort of late October, early November, when you get that seed head go up, it just creates that microclimate underneath, takes the wind over the top and protects the clovers, and you can keep that quality in underneath for a bit longer than if you had nothing covering it all up. So even though it's a poor pasture species that the animals don't really want to eat, it's still providing the service for you. From sort of October on, we can get 30 plus degrees and northwest winds, you know, a week or 10 days of that, and you can burn out a lot of soil moisture in your ground, especially if things aren't very well covered. And you haven't got a bit of seed head that to lift the wind up over the vulnerable pasture species like the clovers and the ryegrasses at that time of year. You can go from looking really good to looking really bad in a week if you haven't got cover, you know. So these got moved in last night at 8 o'clock. This paddock's had the new lambs going around, probably 2 rounds in here over the summer. A lot of this here faces to the north, so got to make sure that I keep these northerly faces covered over the summer. So the lambs have been going around just sort of taking a bit of the bottom out and leaving a lot of the longer stalky stuff. The other day we had 82 mils, and now I want to get some of this ranker grass onto the ground and let some of the quality come up that the lambs are left behind. So these cows and calves are just coming through here doing that job for me. So they'll more than likely come out of here later on today. We got really dry, and I find just going through these areas quickly with the animals and just having them a day in every paddock sort of thing really stimulates the biology in the grass to really kick back into gear after it's had a bit of a dormant spell. So you're not operating this on a sort of a set timetable?
Yeah, I do some planning on the rotations and stuff, but then it changes as soon as the weather changes too. So a lot of the time I'm adjusting what I'm doing to the weather forecast a week out, or what's all of a sudden you get a surprise rain event in there that I'll change my system due to that. So it becomes a whole interplay of the weather and pastures and where you're trying to go. So.
And you're not just looking ahead though, are you?
No, well, when the grass is growing, looking like a day or two behind to see what sort of recovery you're getting there, and that determines what you need to do in front. So if I'm not seeing grass growing a day or two behind and move the animals out, well then I know I've got to start slowing my rounds right down. Sort of typical of our pastures at this time of year, we've pretty much let anything we want to seed. The animals, they'll tend to go through and they'll pick out a lot of the better quality pasture species. The ryegrass, you can't really tell, that sort of breaks down fairly quick, but we can still see a bit of brown top and probably sweet vernal, possibly crested dog's tail around. But that's all just going to provide cover to the soil and feed the soil biology the next little bit. And also find when that stuff lays down and you do get the autumn growth, when the animals come around and graze, they'll only graze down to that old dead layer in the pasture. So it saves you, makes it harder for the animals to get in and really graze too hard on those lush green plants that are coming up. So they, like a new grass seedling coming up, the animals tend to, if they've got access to them, they'll graze them right to the ground, but they won't stick their head down if it's coming up through a bit of dead matter like that. So it sort of helps protect young germinating grass seedlings and stuff in the autumn as well. So we've got all the brown seed stalks, the seed heads there, and there's, like, the ryegrass would have already broken down earlier in the piece. You get down to the ground layer, we can see all the grass seed sitting on the surface there as well. So, in a few days' time, we'll actually start seeing lots of the grass seeding in here coming up through because we've had this moisture, and it just comes up like hairs on a dog's back. We get way more than you ever need, so there's quite a nutrition in coming up in the system, but it's just survival of the fittest from then on, and those ones there. So basically, nature determines which ones are going to win out of all that seed bank. Where we just supply the seed bank for it, and depending on the season and the conditions, nature sorts itself out to what's going to grow there for that season. But it basically works out the whole place is sort of in a new grass system when you get autumn rains like this. Even when it's really dry, when you've got the ground covered like that, it'll actually sweat a little bit under there, so you actually get grass seed germinating in there even though you haven't had any rain, because there's enough moisture. Just like when you put a sheet of plastic over the ground, no matter how dry it looks, you'll still get moisture build up on there. And that's what you're getting here. I can't remember who did the studies, but it was someone in the States. They had a study done on soil temperature and what happened with that moisture in the soil profile. So once the soil temperature stayed under about 18 or 19 degrees, most of the soil moisture in the soil was available to the plant. And once you got over about 22 or 23 degrees, like 90% of it just evaporated straight into the atmosphere instead of going through a plant. So keeping that soil temperature down and keeping it covered over the summer is really important in these sort of dry land environments. And well, it's not that we're that dry, we're having an average rainfall of 1200 mils, but it's pretty sporadically spread throughout the year, so we can go periods where we get 2 or 3 months with basically nothing. And if you can keep that soil temperature and the biology just ticking along there so it's able to respond to the next piece of rain you get, it might be 15 or 20 mils sometimes, and by keeping things covered, it will grow straight away, instead of where traditionally if you've got it grazed out short and you bed your soils, the plants do what they'll green up and that's about it. They don't really have the energy to grow, bounce back and grow.
So that must be a huge advantage. You're really building resilience into your system.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Doing all this and reducing inputs and having a hopefully an easier to manage system going forward as things keep improving, sort of thing.
So tell us, what is the effect of all this on plant roots?
Yeah, they've definitely got deeper since doing the system. If we dig a post hole, we'll find roots right to the bottom of the post hole and putting a post in. My father, a few years ago, he'd get all excited when he used to see that. Dug a straighter post the other day and there was roots right at the bottom. So he gets excited about that because he's a bit sceptical of what we're doing at the start. But yeah, I keep asking him, do you see the pastures getting any worse and stuff with us not putting on fertilizer and doing what we're doing? And he said, no, completely the opposite. It still seems to be improving. The clovers keep looking healthier and stronger.
So how much fertilizer have you been putting on?
Not very much. I worked out a wee while ago with put equivalent to 3 kilos of pea per hectare since 2006. So the standard sort of thing rate would be 15 to 20 kilos of pea per hectare every year, and that's just been on a bit of starter fertilizer and things we've been going around with the drill and putting cocktail mixes in, or our autumn sown mix.
And what about nitrogen?
No, we're not putting nitrogen on.
You're growing better grass than...
Yeah. Well, my father, he changed over in the 1980s from just being, he was an avid superphosphate user. The superphosphate went on the farm before food went on the table for us kids, sort of thing. That was his mentality back then. And then he could see the soils going backwards and the cowpats not breaking down like they used to and stuff.
So how long would you say that you've been going regenerative?
Yeah, it was really, after the drought we had in 2007, I came back onto the farm and we had a really bad autumn drought and it didn't rain till about the 8th or 9th of June. And so I ended up coming on, selling most of the stock off and destocked basically, and then I asked for my building job back because we didn't have much stock left in the place. And I decided after then, right, I'm going to try the next season just to grow as much grass as I can, forget the quality type aspect of it and just grow bulk and have a buffer to get through these dry periods. And then I started mobbing animals up more, and then I come across practitioners like Greg Judy and Greg Brown and the Alan Savory stuff and the holistic grazing management after that. So I'd sort of already got to that point on my own thinking, and then all of a sudden I found these, as quite often happens when you have a mindset change, all of a sudden you find the people that are thinking alike, and yeah, it's sort of built on their knowledge from there.
So we've gone down, what, almost about 15, 20 centimetres?
Yeah. And you see at the top we've got no hard thatch layer. You know, a lot of places you go on to, and there's that sort of thatch, especially when you have got brown top and stuff in the pastures. They tend to have a big thatch layer at the top, and when you cut a slot out, it's really hard to rip them apart. But yeah, when things are breaking down well, it all just sort of crumbles up. And you know, up until 4 or 5 days ago, we were really dry, so there was not a lot of moisture left in the soil profile. Not finding any worms yet, but
so
it should be waking up.
Is this moisture that we're getting even down at the bottom of where you're digging now, is that moisture that's been retained from previously, or just been infiltrated?
This has been infiltrated from this last rainfall. So we'll have a bit of a dig down here and see how far it's gone. You see we have 82 mils. Yeah, so as we start getting down deeper, we can start seeing, you know, the roots that are taking that organic, or feeding that the microbes and stuff down in the soil, the sugars and stuff, and start getting black streaks going into that subsoil as well as we get in. Oh, here's a worm. So a week ago we were really dry and they would have been all coiled up, and he still looks like he's still waking up slowly.
So you're saying that you're seeing like a real response now when you actually get the rain, that it sounds like the system's more primed to receive it?
Yeah, we infiltrate it a lot. You know, when you got that sort of cover, it doesn't run off, it goes in. Because the biggest thing is that cover's creating the environment to actually let the soil infiltrate the rain. So a lot of time, I haven't done it for a few years, but I have played around with doing infiltration tests. And a lot of time my worst infiltrations will be like September, early October, when I have actually got my shortest pasture covers at that time of year. And then I'll get some of the best ones in January when it's really dry, but I've laid that cover down and got that cover sitting there, and it just, the biology helps create that right system to take that moisture in. And then if you get those heavy summertime thunderstorms, well, you soak them in instead of them running off. It's the big thing, is being able to catch that summer rainfall and hold on to it. And then by having those soil temperatures that much cooler, your plants are able to utilise it instead of most of it evaporating back off too. 10 years ago now we had 50 mils in about half an hour.
Wow.
And so I went straight out afterwards to see how much was running off the pastures, and there was nothing going off the pastures. There was lots flowing down all the tracks and off the driveway, and there was a river going down the driveway. But I wanted to see in the pasture areas and water, how much water had gone into the ponds, and there was virtually nothing flowing overland into any of the ponds around the farm. So we were able to soak in 50 mils in half an hour basically in the downpours.
So you've got grass roots going down at least 50 centimetres there?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're still going down further if we keep digging. They're still going down through there.
And that's your insurance policy, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Noticeably tell that's drier than up here.
Yeah.
And down yay far, that top part of that soil, that 8 mils, has gone through all that. So we still got to take in another probably 40 or 50 mils before we're going to start losing moisture through any runoff. Before we were looking after the soils, if you got a rain like that, and you could come out and you'll find dry spots. The moisture hadn't evenly spread throughout the soil profile, and you dig down and you might go down an inch or two and then there'll be a dry spot there. Over there it might have gone down, but you find patches of dry.
So you're not only not getting the benefit of that resource for free that you really need, but you're also in some places possibly even losing soil.
Yeah, it's running off.
So you're not using dogs to move them?
But because they're shifted regularly, they associate the bike with moving to new pastures, so they're easy enough to follow, and it's low stress for them.
When they're leaving, what are you looking for? What do you want to leave behind?
Well, at the moment it's a wee bit different because we've just had 80 mils of rain. So now I'm just wanting to get a bit more of this stuff onto the ground and open it up and give the chance of the new pasture seed that's just germinating to get plenty of light and be able to grow. Some cattle will come through here by April, May, and then with the lush clover and ryegrasses and stuff that will come up through this, they'll balance their diet with some of this brown seed head that's still left standing in here, and that'll all disappear by then.
So why is that important for their diet?
It'll help keep them warm. That fibre in the rumen actually what gives them warmth into those cooler periods, and it also balances out the protein in their diet and slows their digestion down a bit. So if they're feeding on lush green pastures, they'll do sheets. Who will look like a shallow sheet on the ground, and if it's high in protein, it'll get a white skin on it and not break down very quick. And if you've got some fibre in there to balance it out, you get a nice pumpkin pie sort of type effect. You'll get fast breakdown of the dung and stuff when the rumen's functioning well like that. It all just helps things cycle through the system quicker.
And that clearly has an effect on your pastures as well if you're able to cycle that.
Yeah, definitely. We're not putting on the inputs that other farmers are doing, so we need to make sure we're cycling the nutrients we have got through our system as fast as possible and making sure there's as limited leakage out of the system as possible. So, and that's having this brown carbon here with the sheep and the cattle coming across it, that helps hold on to the nitrogen that's coming out of the dung and urine and all of those other nutrients. They have affinity to attach to the carbon and stuff in the soil. So when you're building that, any carbon in the soil has always got lots of minerals and nitrogen and all those things attached to it. So if you're building carbon levels in your soil, you're actually building the whole nutrient profile, because you won't build the carbon levels in there unless all the other nutrients are there.
So you're really focusing on managing that organic matter.
Yeah, it's that active carbon in the soil, that stuff that's turning over and stuff. Because as I said, like on a lot of traditional farms, you'll get that thatch layer at the top. So when they do a soil test, their organic matter may actually be higher than mine. And I've done tests across neighbouring places, and it's shown that they had more organic matter in the top layer of soil where you're doing a traditional soil test than me. But then down at depths, down to 600 and 800 millimetres, we had a lot more carbon in their soil down here. Yeah. You sort of seen in the hole we dug that you can see the roots are going down and taking that black deep down into the subsoil now.
So you're getting storage over time.
Yeah, and the storage deep down is the critical thing. I think that stuff's not going anywhere. If we have a really bad drought, that stuff in the top 15 centimetres, that can volatise into the atmosphere and blow away in the wind or something. But the stuff that's down at 600 mils, it's not going anywhere. In any weather conditions. As I say, when you've got that ground covered and keeping those soil temperatures low, the plants are sitting there ready to grow. They've still got their reserves in their roots, and they'll do this rapid flush of growth, where if you're shorted out and you've got bare soils and the soils have got heated up in the sun and sort of killed a lot of that biology off, their pasture will turn green but won't really have that flush of growth. It takes 2 or 3 rains before they'll actually get up and growing properly a lot of the time. And we're able to get growing on the first piece of rain, not the second or third.
How's the health of your system improved like since you started this approach?
Yeah, well, we use a lot less drenches than we used to. We use drenches as a backup if we see problems rather than just a routine treatment to the animals every 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like some people, so it's just a backstop we try and manage as well as we can without it. With breeding our own stock again and getting into the bushfire shedding sheep, I am doing it, so I am putting a wee bit of pressure on the ewe lambs, especially to choose my replacements out over the summer, so grazing them back over areas they have grazed 30 odd days before, to give them a bit of a worm challenge so I can identify those animals that are a bit more resistant as well. So you can't, if you completely manage them away from worms and swap it up with cattle and stuff, I'm not going to identify those ones that are a bit more resistant as well.
So you're really trying to breed the resilience for your system for this place.
Yeah.
And what about things like facial eczema?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of problems with it here. This whole area 3 and 4 years ago got really badly hit with it. So farmers all around us were losing sheep and cattle, and we had a couple of lambs that had a light bit of facial eczema that was still able to see the freezing work. So,
why do you think that is?
well, I think it's because we're trampling this grass and feeding the fungi and all the biology in the soil, and it's keeping those soil temperatures a bit cooler, and so we've got that great diversity there. So it always seems to be that the bad fungi and bugs or anything always come, the first ones that come back into the system when you oversimplify things.
So in a way you're saying that by having that diversity of beneficial species, they're helping control the bad ones.
Yeah, exactly. Diversity, the more diversity you have, the less of a problem the bad things are. You'll still have, when you dig through our pastures, you can still find the odd grass grub or the odd whatever pest you want to find. They're all still there, but they're not in any sort of populations that are going to cause any detriment to production. And they're just waiting there. If we do something wrong, they will come back and bite us in the bum.
Have you had any challenges or roadblocks along the way, things that were tricky when you started doing things this way? Or has it all just been plain sailing?
I wouldn't say it's always been plain sailing. When we first started changing the grazing, we did take a fair bit of a hit in our sheep production. Our scanning percentage dropped a fair bit. Then after 3 or 4 years, they jumped back to where they were. But we were at that time grazing the dairy grazers, and the sheep we're getting tupped in the worst paddocks on the farm too. So that's sort of a bit of an effect there as well. But those paddocks ended up, with the change of grazing management, started performing really well. But the first few years you're letting those grasses that are there, and it shed a lot of the lower quality of the brown tops and the crested dog's tail and the sweet vernals and stuff to grow, and there wasn't much good quality clovers and stuff in there. But a couple of years of laying those down, and those sort of areas that never had fertilizer on, all of a sudden the clovers start growing and coming up through, and it changes the whole dynamics of the pasture.
So you're saying it's a couple of years before you really started to see things really kick off?
Yeah, in those areas where there was poorer functioning biology happening in the soils, that have lower fertility and stuff, they take a bit longer for sure.
So what do you think, for someone that's thinking of trying to do this themselves, what do you think is really the key to making this work?
Talk to a few people. There's lots of little groups doing what we're doing now. It's a real gaining a real snowball effect around the country. So no matter where you are, there's people close by doing these sorts of things. So get in contact with one of them, start talking to them about what they are doing in your area and what's working, what's not. And the big thing is getting as much information as you can and try and find out what will work for you and your system. Because as I say, my system's a mishmash of everything I've learnt over the years, and I do it how I want to do it, and that's how it should be. You
can't just take what someone else does somewhere else and just plonk it onto your place, though, can you?
No, well, it's not the whole point of this. It's learning to observe what's going on in your soils and the pastures and everything, and adapting to that, and so you should be changing over time.
So it sounds like the key is observation.
Yeah, exactly. It's observing and and having the confidence to make changes on your observations, sort of thing. So.
And recognising that what you do is site specific. It has to match and be tailored to where you are, right?
Yeah,
to
yeah,
your context.
and it's site specific on different parts of the farm, because on a farm like this, we've got all different aspects, and swampy little areas and dry ridges, and so all those need to be managed where you can, slightly differently as well.
So you're not farming to a plan, you're farming to the landscape.
Yeah.
So you've been on this journey and you've seen the kind of benefits that you can get by changing your approach and stuff. I mean, are you there? Have you arrived? Is this as far as it goes? Or?
No, I don't think there is an arrival spot. It's as you say, it's a journey, and we just carry on, and things are improving. We look at other ways to improve things. We've talked about bringing trees into certain areas of the farm and doing some of that sort of thing, and there's always stuff to do. And I mean, if you get there, you got nothing to live for anymore and get up in the morning, so it should always be a journey, I think, and you're always looking forward to the next day and moving forward, not saying you got there and this is all I got to do.
So it's about the evolution of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the whole exciting thing about going down this path. You're not farming to a recipe like everyone else sort of is. You drench every 4 weeks, and you put the fertilizer on at this time of year. It's you get totally away from that, and you use your observation skills and start making decisions based off of that, and you're not tied to anything, and it sort of frees you up, and you think a lot more about how the whole system works. And do
you think it might have changed in some ways the way you feel about farming? You're
always looking to make a positive change rather than just reacting to the negative things that are happening. My sheep are getting sick, I've got to give them this, or my pasture's not growing like I need to go and buy some fertilizer, and it makes you feel like you're in control rather than just running around putting band-aids on everything, sort of thing.
That must be good. It must make you feel better getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, it definitely helps, and especially in the hard times when you are having droughts. Droughts and dry periods like that still hurt, and we had a really tough season last year, but knowing that we've got some resilience in our system, that we're going to bounce back from it and come out of it okay in the end, sort of thing. It sort of gives you hope just to keep moving forward, sort of thing.
And I guess it must feel good knowing that understanding your system better, you can feel like you've got levers to pull, like there's things that you can do about it.
Yeah, there's always something you can do, and evaluate at the end of the season and say, what could have I done better and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's the way I look at it is in a conventional system, those people, if they've grazed perfectly every year, a lot of them, that's how they believe. The only thing that was wrong for them is the rain came at the wrong time or something like that. And my system, it's the other way around. The rain does what it does, and it's how you react to those conditions that's wrong. So basically, at the end of every season, if you evaluate, I never got it right, but you're always striving to do it better if this happens next time. How would have I done it? But you sort of act on information you got up to a point, and then things don't always go into the future as you planned, and you got to keep adjusting. But when you look back, you could have done things a lot different sometimes. But that's the whole thing. It keeps your mind active all the time, rather than putting your hands and giving up that the elements didn't do what they were supposed to do at the time. You can't rely on that.
Yeah. The weather's not behaving.
No.
Yeah. But you're learning all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's got to feel good.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, like all the people that seem to go down this regenerative type space, they seem to be happier and more positive about what they're doing, and when you're talking in groups of farmers doing these sorts of things, it's a totally different environment, and everyone's sort of feeding off each other and sharing ideas, and got open minds to whatever other people throw up, and it's good.
So how do you feel about the future?
We're positive that things are all moving in the right direction, and we're changing sheep species with these shedding sheep, and so that's something different and exciting to keep us stimulated, and hopefully in the future one of the kids will want to take over and carry on, and
So that's it for today's episode. I hope you got something out of it. I know I really enjoyed getting to spend time with Dean walk the land and really get a much better sense of exactly, what he's doing, why he's doing it. I walked away being really impressed by Dean's keen observation skills and his strong intuition for both the health of his animals and the landscape. And I think these skills, along with his willingness to continually ask questions and just keep learning, has really helped him to be able to harness the biological function of his land. Dean's sophisticated use of animal disturbance, timing and observation of feedback has really been powerful in helping to turn things around on the farm. In a lot of ways, what Dean showed is something that I'm constantly saying, which is that, you're not a farmer, you're an ecosystem manager, whether you realise it or not. And when Dean realised it, it allowed him to really partner with the biology of his landscape and use that to build function and ultimately resilience. The end result of all this is a landscape that can weather the dry much better and bounce back faster when it does rain. Having this resilience means that ultimately Dean is taking full advantage of all the things that he gets for free: the sunlight, the CO2 and the rain. While their regenerative farming journey is ongoing, I feel confident that they're getting better positioned every year to take whatever the future has to throw at them. And I, for one, really look forward to seeing how things evolve there. So that's it for today. Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel for more regenerative farming visits, and hopefully see you on the next one.